Trevor Devall, and I'm very excited to be voicing Rocket Raccoon on Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, the new animated series brought to you on Disney XD. I'm very happy to be the voice of the most lovable and heavily armed rodent in all of the Marvel Universe.
We're going to start at the news that announced the other day, because the other day they announced a voice cast for the upcoming Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy show, which is full of a lot of really big names, and you are... well, the fan favorite Rocket Raccoon.
That is true. I play Rocket Raccoon in the new show that'll be on Disney XD probably sometime later this year. Very excited about that.
So how do you feel about stepping into the shoes of someone that, well, no one thought Bradley Cooper would be able to pull off the role, well, at least make the movie as big as it was, but now that it's so big, how do you feel stepping into the raccoon?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I loved the movie. I've seen it several times. I loved what he did with Rocket. I thought he was great. When I auditioned for this role, which is almost a year ago now, I had no idea what I was auditioning for. I hadn't seen a trailer for the movie. I'd never heard of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So when I went into audition, they said, okay, he's a raccoon, and he's like angry and stuff. I was like, okay. And all I knew is that Billy West had played the character before and that Seth Green had played the character before. So I walked in going, oh no, oh, big shoes. And so I auditioned, I got the job, and we started doing it. And only then did I realize just what it was that I had booked, because then the movie came out and I saw it and I went, oh, wow, this is big. And so yeah, we've been recording it for a while, but it was the first time we were able to actually talk about it was this week, obviously. So it's been tremendous. I mean, it's and the other thing too is that I had no idea that this because Marvel said they were going to roll out the show this week, and I thought, oh, it'll be just a little tweet or something, maybe a couple of my fans will go, oh, good for you, by the way, you're a raccoon. But no, not so. It was like this giant thing. There was an article on me in the Hollywood Reporter, and then there was another article on me on Kevin Michael Richardson in Entertainment Weekly, and I was like, what is good? What's going on here? But then, oh, right, of course, this is Marvel, this is Guardians of the Galaxy, this is a huge deal. So, yeah, I'm just kind of enjoying the ride right now.
yeah, that's an awesome voice cast. Like Kevin Michael Richardson, James Arnold Taylor. The cast of that show is full of a lot of awesome veterans. Do you guys actually get to record together, or is it the separate?
No, we as often as we can, we record all together. So it's tremendous. Kevin Michael Richardson is an old hero of mine. I remember this is my first big show in LA, because I've only been in LA about a year and a half. So when I got this job and I walked into the room and there he was, and he started talking, and all I could think was, oh my God, it's Saravok from Baldur's Gate.
Oh my goodness, he is.
Yes. So I turned to him and I said, Kevin, don't take this the wrong way. I don't go fanboy or anything, but you were Saravok, man. Oh my God, that's awesome. He was like,
I did the same thing with Jim Cummings like a month ago at Comic-Con here, and it's like, do you still have your little rat or your hamster? Sorry. Because he carried around his hamster and he talked with his hamster the entire game.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it was a big deal, man. And he was like, man, nobody remembers that. That was my first video game. I can't believe it. I was like, I remember it. So it's great. And Will Friedle, who plays Star-Lord, is awesome.
Terry McGinnis.
He's tremendous at the role. When he first started playing the role, I thought, oh man, he's really got Chris Pratt down. Like he's got his attitude down. And that's the thing too about our cast, is that I don't think that when they were casting, they were looking for sound-alikes for the guys in the movies. So, like, at no time was I told, well, you have to sound more like Bradley Cooper, because we're sort of making our own thing. So, like, Will, he doesn't sound like Chris Pratt, but he's got the exact Star-Lord attitude. And same with everything. Like Vanessa, who plays Gamora, she doesn't sound like Gamora in the movie, but she certainly has the attitude. Or David, who plays Drax, same thing. He doesn't really sound like what's his name in the movie?
Dave Bautista.
Dave Bautista, but he sure feels like him. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean my Rocket Raccoon sounds nothing like what Bradley Cooper was doing, but it seems to work, and the Marvel guys are super happy with it. And we love it. The scripts are great, super funny. Yeah, I'm jazzed, man.
You got to play Rocket Raccoon once before, didn't you? I remember a Spider-Man cartoon from a few years ago where there was Rocket Raccoon for.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a funny story because in all the news reports and all the press and everything, it says just that. It says, oh well, he's returning to his role as Rocket Raccoon. But the thing is that when I got booked on this job, they sent me to another studio and said, okay, so there was a couple of episodes of other Marvel shows that got recorded. We need you to revoice them. So in fact, those episodes had aired already with somebody else playing the voice. And I redubbed. So that's a weird little thing. So in fact, the first time I'd ever played Rocket Raccoon was when I was going back to redub the voice for whoever did it in the Ultimate Spider-Man episode.
And this is the first Marvel animation project that I know of, and I've followed it a lot in my lifetime, where it has just so much excitement as like a Bruce Timm project does with DC. Because when Bruce Timm touches DC, people are like, "Oh, it's going to be gold." and most Marvel ones. Well, some of the movies have been good, some of the shows have been good, but they haven't gotten as much hype as, say, a Bruce Timm project as well. This one is actually getting that much hype, that much support, and they're really throwing their weight behind it, trying to make it big.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that it's so popular is the fact that, I mean, that was the #1 movie last year, man. It was huge. It was huge, and I think because it was so unexpected. Like the whole franchise was so out of left field, you know. It was like. And now, we've done Iron Man, we've done Thor, we've done the Avengers. Oh, how about Guardians of the Galaxy, this obscure, like, 70s comic that no one knew about? And, of course, it explodes and turns into this massive thing. So I think that's the reason why there's a lot more hype to it, is because it is new and people don't really, maybe weren't as familiar with it before. I mean, I'm talking the general population. Obviously, comic fans know all about it. But
yeah, and that came right on the heels of, like, I think one of the DC CEOs said, you know, Wonder Woman is too silly to be put on the big screen, and Marvel's like, we're putting a raccoon with a tree.
Exactly.
And it worked well. And I'm really looking forward to it. That little clips that they showed, you know, all the introducing the voice actors, all those like 16-second clips. Did they really just have you record for 20 to 30 seconds and keep it, or was there more to it than that?
There is more, which I'm sure eventually you will see.
Okay, because it's like, I don't think they just say, give me a 16-second clip right now.
Well, we're very busy. We had no time to, 16 seconds is all you get. Sorry.
So, a lot of our listeners are Star Wars fans, and, Star Wars is big now. A lot of the voice cast you're with, you worked with Star Wars, James Arnold Taylor he's Obi-Wan, Vanessa is Hera, and another Disney XD project with Rebels. But you got to voice a lot of characters in the Lego Star Wars specials with the Yoda Chronicles, specials that, at least I remember when they came out, people were like, what is this? And then it ended up actually being really fun with, I think Michael Price wrote them from The Simpsons and so on. What was it like working with Star Wars, especially in an irreverent side of Star Wars, where you could just really have fun with it rather than taking it as serious as, Vanessa Marshall has to with Rebels?
Right. That project, Lego Star Wars, is hands down my favorite show I've ever done. It was so much fun for so many reasons. One, it's Star Wars! I got to be part of a Star Wars cast, which was like, I grew up, man, in the late 70s when the movie was first coming out, and it's a huge part of my childhood. So to be part of that franchise was just like, wow, this is incredible. Second of all, Michael Price was the writer and the creator of it, and he's a very, not only is he a very funny man, as you say, he writes for The Simpsons. He is also an extremely well-versed man when it comes to Star Wars lore. So those shows and those scripts are absolutely littered with jokes and references that only the diehard Star Wars fan will really get. And that, for me, was so awesome. When I saw those scripts, I was like, oh, like 50 people are going to get this. I love it. So super fun. And I got to play some pretty iconic characters, too. I mean, the Emperor was great because Michael wrote the Emperor to be, I think, probably the funniest character in the show. He's so ridiculous, so ridiculous. And when I first got the job, they had us matching the voices. So my first Emperor, when I went in for my first session, was very much like Ian McDermott. It was very, very, true to what his real character was. But they kept saying, yeah, that's good, but it has to be funny. I thought, how do you make this guy funny? So that's why the voice sort of evolved into. Somebody mentioned they reminded them of Mark Hamill's The Joker, and I thought, hey, yeah, I think you're right. I think it kind of does. Sort of had that sort of feel to it, But yeah.
And then you also got to do Piet and Jar Jar and Akbar and Bibford. Piet, I believe in the previous one was actually voiced by the original voice guy, wasn't he?
It could be. I'm not sure.
I seem to remember Empire Strikes Out. They got like a bunch of original original actors in there, and then they probably realized that that's expensive.
Well, tell me as Akbar, you at least got to yell, "It's a trap" one time.
Oh, lots of time.
Yes, he did.
That's a running gag in the show. Every time something bad happens, Akbar pops in. It's a trap. But you already knew that or whatever. So it's great fun. Yeah.
I remember watching that one I work with a mental hospital, and I work with the children on there, and I got to watch the Yoda Chronicles. And when Jar Jar popped up, the first question they asked was, I thought he died in the first episode. Because I guess he exploded, but he's Legos. Legos never die.
Exactly. Legos just get put back together. Yeah, it's funny because Jar Jar Binks, I think it's fair to say he's probably the most hated character in the canon. And so that's why it's hilarious for me to play him, because I hated him too. But they were doing the casting, and they said, well, Trev, you're Jar Jar. And I just thought, oh, me son, whatever. It was like, okay, all right. George's childhood, a wreck of my childhood. George childhood. Wow, ridiculous. George Lucas wrecked my childhood. Can you edit that out? I screwed up the joke. Anyway, so Jar Jar, he was fun to play. They're all fun to play. But, he keeps coming back for running gags, too. So, which is great. It's great. It's all great. I love it.
And this was the very first time you got to work in a Star Wars project?
Yeah, it was my first kick at the Star Wars can. So that was because of course they did Clone Wars down here in LA, and Rebels of course is done down here in LA. So we did the Yoda Chronicles back north in Vancouver, and it's so much fun. And the people involved, the actors are great, the animation's great, the scripts are great. It's one of my favorite shows to work on.
Maybe I should start probing BioWare Austin to get you in the Old Republic, because that has, like, if you look at the cast of that one, it's like nearly every voice actor I've ever heard of, and then, of course, dozens I haven't.
Right.
Because that one, I don't know, well, they're always expanding it, so maybe you can get into more Star Wars through BioWare's illustrious project. Yeah,
that would be good. I have at this point, and I can't say too much about it, but I have a very tenuous tie to the new movie. So we'll see if that materializes or not, but that would be the coolest thing.
Ooh. In a world. Plus, you're in Edmonton, right?
No, I'm in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, but you're from Canada.
Yeah, I grew up in Edmonton, so I knew the BioWare guys, but that was just as I was leaving, because I moved to Vancouver for 15 years, and that's when I started my career in the voice world. I never actually did any voice work in Edmonton.
Okay, because I know that we've met Mark Meir and all those people up in Edmonton who, well, they do the BioWare Edmonton stuff. Yeah, Mark is an old friend of mine from way back, and he's really exploded with that company and those properties. It's tremendous. And I said he was actually just down here a couple months ago visiting, him and his wife, and. Linda, she's nice. She's awesome. Linda's awesome, yeah. He was staying with Nathan Fillion, who, again, is an old friend of ours from back there. And but I was sitting with Mark, and I was like, so, I mean, you're huge, man. Are you not coming down here? And he's like, nah, I got a good in Edmonton. I'm like, okay, well, that's awesome. If you can have the career you have in Edmonton, then
giddy up. I mean, all the power to you.
Awesome. I'm going to switch over to not Trevor. Sorry, you are Trevor. To Zach for just a second, because he has questions that he wants to be a voice actor, so he has some questions from that angle. As I'm going to get myself a drink real quick. So, Zach, I'm going to switch it over to you.
Sounds like a plan. So, I mean, as is made very obvious throughout just this interview alone, you can transition between a lot of dialects very rapidly and convincingly. Do you have like a favorite one of those that you do?
Dialects? You mean like accents?
Yes.
Oh boy. That's hard to say. I love them all, you know. I do. It's tough. Favorite? Man, I don't know if I have a favorite. It's hard because it's funny because you say that. You say, oh, well, you know, you obviously can transition, but I'm totally unaware of it. So when you said that, all I could think was, did I do an accent or a voice or something? Like, I'm totally oblivious to it. I was having lunch with a friend of mine the other day in Burbank, and he was talking about how he might have to go to South Africa for 6 months to work on a job. And so right away I started speaking with a South African accent, just because, you know, it was quite lovely this time of year, Cape Town, you know. And then I was talking to him about South Africa, and beside us there was this girl, you know, and she looked over at me and she said, "Oh, are you from South Africa?" And I turned and I said, No, I'm not. I'm just putting on the voice, you know. But she said, "Oh, so you're an actor then?" And I went, "Oh, I am a voice guy." Sorry. Enjoy your lunch.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So how do you go about like developing that sort of ability? Did you find you had kind of just an innate propensity for that, or did you like look at something and say, I want to do that, and then just hammered away at it?
Well, I was doing voices and accents, excuse me, since I was a little kid. My brother was the first one to do. He did a Scottish accent around the dinner table when I was around 5 or 6 years old. And I saw everybody laughing at that, and so I thought, here's the key to world domination. Get people to laugh at my accent. Perfect. So I just started imitating him, basically. And then I kind of discovered that I did have a natural, I had a good ear for it, you know, like, I remember when I was a kid, I was a musician as well, but I couldn't read music to save my life. So everything was by ear. And to this day, I play music entirely by ear. And that musicality is such a huge part of what we do in animation, because you have to listen to the music of the words in order to really perform them. You know what I mean? So it is something that I was born with, this sort of natural instinct to be able to do this stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that absolutely confounded me. I remember for years I couldn't do an Australian accent, and then one day, this woman told me, she said she was dating an Aussie, and she was dating this Aussie guy for like 5 years. And she said to me, "Oh," she said, "an Aussie accent is easy. You just have to say the word no," as in a negation, right? The opposite of yes. You have to say the word no as though it's spelled N-O-I. And as soon as she said that, no, you know, and all of a sudden it was like a light came on, and I was able to do it right away. It was really good. So little moments like that. And it's funny because even the South African accent, that's only in the past few months I've learned to be able to do that. To me, the South African accent was the holy grail of accents for years and years and years. And then I was hanging laundry. Oh, the glories of the tale. I was hanging laundry, and I just, for no real good reason, just started to talk in the South African accent, which I had never been able to do before. And it just happened. And yeah, I think it might have come from what was that movie, District 9, the alien movie that takes place down there.
Yeah,
District 9.
There's a great phrase that I use to get me into that accent. We have something called key phrases, which are if you're doing a voice or an accent or something, a key phrase is something that really helps you immediately get into the voice or the accent. And so I stole a key phrase from that movie, which was the prawns, they pop like little popcorns, you know, when he's talking about the little baby aliens that are in the fire and they're all being murdered.
Yeah.
The prawns, they pop like little popcorns, you know. And that, for me, that phrase sort of immediately takes me into that accent.
So when you started doing voice work, for the most part with dubbing with anime and so on, did they just want you to have a very understandable, that's English voice in general? Because a lot of the anime just seems to be, well, some of the dubbing seems to be fairly dry, or it seems to be they're looking for something that's as clear in English as you can get, and they don't really care for like the personality of it.
I actually was doing prelay before I was doing anime. But when I did start to do anime, which is a whole other set of tools, like it's a completely different kind of skill set you need, because it's obviously extraordinarily technical. But to answer your question, yes, they do want sort of clarity. Clarity is the most important thing. So obviously people have to understand what you're saying, and what that often means is the producers are asking for what they consider a neutral accent, which to them typically means the accent of Northern California. Because to them, that's neutral. So you have to do that. And but, you know, within that, you still have a lot of range to be able to play with certain things. Like, I played Mula Flaga on Gundam Seed and Gundam Seed Destiny. And, you know, his voice is very similar to my own. It's just more of a swagger than anything that goes into it. But, you know, there was characters like on Black Lagoon, for example. Black Lagoon, I played a bunch of them, but one of my favorite characters was an Irishman named Legark, and he was nuts. You know, he was really up here at a time, and he was after that kind of stuff, and you know, so that was super fun. But you still had to act within the technical restraints of dubbing, right? Obviously, you still had to match the flaps, the mouth movements, and things like that. But no, you know, the clarity is the most important thing, for sure. They have to understand what you're saying. So they don't often ask for very exotic accents most of the time.
So here's a listener question that would actually go with exotic accent or so on. The listener is saying how you started off with a lot of more serious projects like, you know, anime and so on, where you have more serious characters. But recently you've morphed into someone who does a lot more comedic roles, and you can definitely tell by, you know, talking to you that you're a very comedic person. So they want to know how you were able to get into projects like Zeke's Pad and My Little Pony, and projects where you could just cut loose and do ridiculous things and it's perfectly okay.
Well, it's funny, that's the perception, because I've been a goofball my whole life, and what amazed me was when I would get serious roles. I was, what? You're casting me for this? But it's drama. Ugh, what do I know about that? So I've always done, and you know, if you were to hear outtakes of even the most serious, dramatic stuff that I've ever done, you know, I'm constantly joking around. I'm constantly mocking it. So even in the most serious moments, I'm always finding a way to you know, at least make my fellow actors laugh. That's what I do try and do. Yeah, I've always had a flair for the comedy, so it's been really great to be able to do sort of higher profile jobs that really kind of showcase that a little bit more, especially the My Little Pony gigs. That was great. I mean, Iron Will is one of my favorite characters I've ever played. He was so much fun. Yeah, Zeke's Pad. Yeah, that was lots of fun to do. I played multiple characters on that one. And yeah, and Rocket. You know, that's the other thing about Guardians, is that Guardians it's an action show, but it's funny. It's really, really funny, which is great because it allows me to sort of, you know, tap into the old comedic timing thing. So yeah.
So your earlier roles where you had to be serious were more of a stretch for you than being able to be, say, Rocket now, where you can just have the comedic timing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend not to really, well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I enjoy all of my work, but I really enjoy the comedy. I think that's more what I get more out of most of the time. The serious stuff is good too, but most of the time I don't feel quite the same satisfaction as I do when I'm, you know, doing some really, especially, you know, the more over the top, the zanier, the crazier, the more cartoony, the better.
So have you ever, there are some voice actors like that we've talked to, and I've met, like Corey Burton and Tom Kane and so on, where they take things not really seriously, but, you know, they sit down, they take it like a craft and so on. Have you ever worked with voice actors where you, being the one that does the jokes and the hyper jokey one, kind of ruffled the wrong feathers? Like I've heard stories of oh darn, what's his name? He does all the animal noises and all the crazy noises. Yeah, D. Yes, he does that sort of thing too, even in panels.
Yeah. No, I haven't run into that, because in the end of the day, as much as I do like to joke around, I'm still a professional, and I still make sure that I get the job done, and I'm also very efficient. I don't tend to have to do multiple takes. I can pretty much nail exactly what needs to be done in 1 or 2 takes. And if the director gives me a note, I can immediately incorporate that and give them what they want. So what that means is our sessions are much shorter, and that means that there's more time to joke around. Joking around and screwing around are 2 different things as well. Nobody I work with is unprofessional enough to screw around and waste time, but virtually everybody I work with is certainly fun enough to joke around. Do you see the difference there? It's not.
Yes, yeah,
very much.
There's a difference between wasting lots of time and as soon as the take is done, farting.
Or something like that.
That was something that D told me as I think it was a Star Wars Celebration, where he said, there's on all the very serious scenes they had to do in Clone Wars, they'd end and he'd do something, he'd just like fart or something like that because everyone was so serious and he needed to be calmed down.
Yeah, that happens all the time. I worked back home with a guy named Richard Cox, who I still work with Richard quite a bit, and he was the voice of Inuyasha and endless characters. Really, really great guy, super funny, and endlessly pulling stunts like that in the booth. All the time. As soon as there's an awkward silence, he will fill it with some sort of gas noise or something like that. It's just what he does.
So I have 2 fan questions. The first one is, you were a quite prominent role in Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. What's your opinion or thoughts on the upcoming live-action movie that they say they're going to do with Scarlett Johansson and so on that they've already cast?
To tell you the truth, that's the first I've heard about it. I didn't even know they were doing it.
Ah, okay. So you're not like Richard Epcar, who's like rah 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 rah.
You heard it here
He's not
first.
very happy about that movie.
No, I've never even heard of it. I mean, for me, the Ghost in the Shell shows that we did, that's a number of years ago now. So I barely remember them. Togusa, I think I played. Yeah. There you go. That's how much I remember. Who did I play? Who was it? Was it Murray? Was it? I think it was a character named Murray. I don't know. So I don't really have thoughts on the movie. I guess if it's got Scarlett Johansson in it, it can't be that bad.
So the next question is, has there ever been a role or a voice required of you that had to stretch you more than any others? Was there any particularly challenging voice for you to pull off? And if so, what was it?
Well, they all have their challenges. I mean, voice and character, they're the same thing, right? Like you never really, in your mind, you never really separate. I do a great voice because you're always thinking that's the character that has this voice. So they're pretty much intertwined. And I tend to be very instinctual and very in the moment. A lot of actors, what they'll do is they'll go over their scripts very carefully before record, and they'll really, really, read the whole thing and get to know what's going on. I almost never do that. I typically, if I look at the script at all the day before, I'm literally going through it looking for my lines, going, okay, yeah, okay, good. And then when which is a horrible thing to admit, but it's the truth. And then when I get to session, that way everything's fresh for me. So that way when someone is acting with me and they say their line, it's the first time I've heard it. And it's also the first time that I've even been made aware of it because I didn't really read the script. So consequently, what that means is my reactions tend to be very in the moment and very natural in terms of the performance level. Or that's misleading. It's not natural in terms of performance. It's more, it's just more of an honest response to what the other person is saying. Now, I'm not saying that's the better way to do it. I'm just saying that's my way to do it because it keeps me engaged all the time and it keeps me really, really fresh and in the moment and in the zone. So with that said, every character I do is a challenge because I want to make sure that I'm true to it no matter what the character is. And there are some voices that are harder to do than others, right? Like we did a video game. This is a classic example I tell all the time. We did a video game years ago, a Warhammer, not the 40,000 ones. We did those too, but it was a Warhammer fantasy game. And I was playing, among others, I was playing all the Skaven, and the Skaven are like these rat men. And so it was 300 lines of kill, die for the whole rat. That stuff. That was a little brutal, as you can imagine. Yeah, rather tough on the throat. So that was certainly a challenge, just to be able to speak for the rest of the week. But yeah, I mean, they're all challenging in their own ways. But to tell you the truth, I'm just too busy having fun to notice the challenge. I'm too busy enjoying it for it to even resemble work in my mind.
Did you ever get to scream the blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne? And
Well, that's what I like to call my bedroom voice. I reserve that.
Okay, Zach, you have a question, I know, that's related to what we were talking about.
Well, I had, because you mentioned that they're all challenging in their own way. I've heard dubbing, like for anime and things, is a uniquely challenging sort of work. What would you say are the primary differences from dubbing and doing like the Western animation or video games or anything like that?
Dubbing is very, very different. As I said, it has a different set of skills. You're still acting the same, but the difference is that now with dubbing, you have to perform within very specific physical parameters, which is the mouth flaps. So you don't have, the luxury to take all the time in the world to say a line, or even certain rhythms of how you say lines have to, in some sense, be structured according to what's going on visually. That doesn't happen in prelay animation, because in prelay animation, we perform it and then they draw it based on what we did. But in dubbing, it's the other way around, obviously. The show's already done, it's already animated, so now we have to adjust our instincts and our performance to match what's happening physically. And by that, I mean specifically with the mouth flaps, right? That's what we call those when the mouth is moving, the mouth flaps. So matching the flaps, excuse me, is a whole other set of skills that, some people are naturally good at, and some people never quite get it. Yeah, it is challenging that way. The other thing that's challenging about dubbing is that when you record like an anime show, you typically go in and the only thing you're recording is your lines. So the director will say, okay, go to your first line's at 25. So you go to line 25, you say it. And then they go, okay, great. Now jump up to line 126. So you jump up to line 26, and then you say the line. And then so you're doing all your lines in an episode, but you're not seeing the rest of the episode. So when people come up to me and they say, hey, so what'd you think about the plot or the story in that show? I just go, I don't know what you're talking about, because I never saw it. All I saw was my own my own role in the show. So that means it's contingent upon the director to really understand the context of the show, to be able to maneuver us in our choices to all sync up under his vision of what the show has to be based on how it looks, right?
Right.
So I have a question that goes with this one. I'm going to put this in a little context so the question makes more sense. But we interviewed Damian Clark not that long ago, and he does Dragon Ball Z, and he was talking about how he recorded his lines as Cell, and then he watched the episode and realized his character absorbs people through his butt, and didn't know that this was happening. And stuff like this happen in anime all the time, where it's just strange images. Have you ever recorded an episode and then seen it separately and gone, what the heck did I just get into?
I say that after every anime I do. To tell you the truth, the only anime show that I've ever watched that I've done is Death Note. And I watched Death Note from start to finish, not just because I was sort of one of the more main characters, but because it was one of the few animes that I understood. I understood what was going on. I could follow the story. And then it got a bit weird in the end, as they always get weird. But I was still kind of able to figure out what was going on, who was who, what the relationships were. Whereas in most anime, I am lost. Totally lost. So honestly, if I watch a show that I've done and something weird happens, I just go, okay, well, I don't question that anymore. I just accept that it was a very weird thing. And oh well.
So you do a podcast as well, right, where you interview like voice actors and so on?
Yes, it's called Voice Print with Trevor Devall and guests. I started it back in 2005, I think was my first episode. 2005, 2006. We did 36 episodes, and it was me interviewing more or less the Vancouver voice community, but some American actors as well, and talking about their history, about how they got into business, shared some funny stories, advice for newcomers. Yeah, that was a tremendous amount of fun, and I've been told very helpful for a lot of sort of budding voice actors would listen to that show and go, oh wow, that's a great, a little tip to carry into my next audition or something. So that's great when I hear that. That actually makes me feel pretty good that I was able to sort of give back to the community a little bit. There is talk of a Voice Print USA, which would be me recording from here. But I'm still working on that, and we shall see if that gets revealed in the next year or so.
Are your old episodes still available on like iTunes or somewhere where people can actually go listen to them? Like, I'm quite sure Zach here would love to go listen to some of those.
I'm already looking for it.
Yes, it's all for free on iTunes. It's also on my website, trevordevall.com. You can download them directly from there. Or, as I said, you can subscribe to them on iTunes. Doesn't cost you nothing.
Awesome. So you're obviously a fan of your work. You're obviously a fan of voiceovers and of the shows and things you get to do just because it's so much fun. Have you ever been starstruck when you're recording something, either with who you're working with or, a fellow voice actor or director? Have you ever been starstruck with a project where you walk in there and go, oh my goodness, that's so-and-so, I'm here next to them, what can I do?
Well, that's happened more and more since I moved to Los Angeles, as you can imagine. I don't tend to really get starstruck exactly because to me, I'm just looking at them as they're just another performer. But that said, the first time I worked with Tom Kenny, SpongeBob SquarePants, that was something pretty cool. He came in to do a session of a show that I was doing, and when I realized who he was, I thought, how did I get here? How did I get here? I'm doing a session with SpongeBob freaking SquarePants. That's amazing. And then not too much longer after that, I was at a party and I was, having drinks with John DiMaggio, thinking, wow, and I met Phil Lamar at the same party. My friend David Kay was hosting this barbecue, and I met these fellas here, and I was like, this is really kind of cool because they're my heroes, but they're just doing exactly what I'm doing. There's no difference, and they're just the same kind of great guys that they are back home. They're just guys who do a silly job and they have a good time and they're very good at it and they're very professional. But in the end of the day, they don't take themselves too seriously because, look what we do for a living. But that's been really, really nice about working down here is when I do work with these, big names, so to speak. And even bigger, there's just been a lot of celebrities that I've worked with on various shows that I'm kind of like, this is kind of cool. I'm working with these people who are on this giant show. And of course, I can't give you any details yet because NDAs all got signed. But believe me, it's happened.
Being a Star Wars fan, have you ever gotten to work with Mark Hamill, who's made a bigger, well, not a bigger, but a big name for himself in voice acting as well as just as Star Wars?
I haven't worked with Mark yet, but I think A, that's just a matter of time, and also B, he's quite good friends with James Arnold Taylor, and James and I are pretty tight. So I have no doubt that I will eventually wind up running into Mark. But Mark was a voice actor before he was an on-camera guy. He did Ralph Bakshi's Wizards. That would have been 1977, I think, right before he did Star Wars. So, yeah.
Bakshi. I haven't thought of him, the Lord of the Rings guy, right?
That's right, yeah. Wizards is a tremendous film. I just love it. A lot of people have problems with Bakshi. I love him. I think he was an absolute pioneer in the industry that was unafraid and unapologetic to do his own thing. His work wasn't perfect, but hey, whose is? So Mark had done Wizards, and if you haven't seen it, I heartily recommend you check it out. It's such a great film. Really cool little cartoon. He got his start in animation there, and I don't think a lot of people know that. So when I do finally meet him, I'll have to tell him, oh, by the way, Mr. Hamill, I am aware of your previous animated engagements.
Okay, Zach, ask your question before I forget it.
Well, I was wondering, with this sort of work, was this a line of work you just gradually kind of found yourself more and more involved in, or was there like a moment when you saw something and it just made you think, okay, I need to do this?
How this happened, I've told this story elsewhere, but I'll give you the truncated version. When I moved to Vancouver, it was 1998, and the reason why I moved was because I was a director. I was a filmmaker, and Vancouver was a hopping place at that time. You couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a film set on every street corner. It was just crazy. That was the heady days of the X-Files. So everything was going on there, movies and TV shows and everything. And I wanted to go and be a part of it as a director. Doing voiceover it never even occurred to me. I didn't even realize that was a job. But a friend of mine, before I moved, he said to me, you should do voice work. And I went, who are the what now? He said, like cartoons and stuff. And I thought, oh, that's a job? Weird. Okay, I guess. So I talked to my agents and I said, so I do these voices and accents and stuff. Is there anything we can do? Long story short, he got me an audition for a show, a little tiny show called Spider-Man. And the role was for Spider-Man. And I went in there and I auditioned for it. And I was so green, I was so new, that I didn't know that in that particular studio you had to put the headphones on to listen to the director. So consequently, I couldn't hear anything the director was saying. I didn't get any of his direction, and that was not one of my finer moments. but it certainly opened my eyes to this whole new world. And then shortly after that, I booked a show called The Lost Continent, which sadly never went to air. We recorded 26 episodes of the show, and then I think the company ran out of money or something. It was a real shame because it was a really cool show. But that show started my whole career because after I blew the Spider-Man audition, I thought, okay, well, so much for that. I guess I won't be doing this. And then a few months went by, and I totally forgot about it. And then I got this audition for the show, for this Lost Continent show. And the character was named Sir Geoffrey de Belvedere, and he was a 12th century British knight. And the way he was written, he was very sort of boisterous and big like this, and, blah, 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 blah. And so I did the audition, very much like this, and I was Sir Geoffrey de Belvedere, doing my thing, trying to help the main character with his quest. And then at the end, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to throw a big laugh in there. So I said my final line, and then or something like that. That laugh started my entire career, because when I spoke to the producers when we recorded the series, the producer said to me, when we were casting this show, we hated the character. We didn't like Sir Geoffrey. We didn't like how he was written. We didn't like even how he was drawn in the concept pictures. We didn't like the auditions we were hearing. We were about to write him out of the show, and then you came in and did the audition, and you did that laugh, and we all looked at each other and went, "Oh my God, it's Sir Geoffrey!" So that show, that laugh, that one actor choice started my entire career, because by the end of that week, I was working on like 3 other shows. It was just bang, 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 bang. And the rest is history, as they say.
Wow.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Any follow-up to that, Zach?
I think wow suffices. That's
So we're going to begin wrapping this up because we're almost to the limit of the time that we said. So we're going to give you an opportunity now to promote anything else that you have coming out, any appearances, any conventions, your website, your social media, upcoming shows, anything like that. We're going to give you the soapbox to promote anything you want, or say pretty much whatever you want to the fans, and we'll just shut up and listen.
Okay. I don't even know where to start. That's so much. If you want to follow me, I could use more followers on Twitter. I'm still kind of new to Twitter, and I haven't quite figured out how it's supposed to work yet. Do I write my thoughts? I don't really understand. Anyway, so I'm at Trevor Devall, so that's fairly easy to decipher. My website is trevordevall.com, and on it you can find not only a bio on me and all my various demos, voice demos, but also all of the voice print episodes, which I heartily encourage you to listen to. They were a lot of fun, and as I said, people have really found them very useful for all kinds of things. Voice Print with Trevor Devall and Guest is what it's called, and you can get it on iTunes, or you can get it on my website, trevordevall.com. In terms of conventions, I do have a couple coming up. I suspect there's going to be a lot more now that this Rocket Raccoon announcement has happened. But so far, I'm doing a My Little Pony convention in June in Houston, which is, I think, Fiesta Equestria. I think that's I forget which weekend in June it is. I'm doing an anime convention in Tennessee somewhere in July. I don't have my schedule right in front of me, so I'm not sure which one that is. So yeah, if you guys are in that neighborhood and want to come down and say hello, please do. Yeah, and I think that any other sort of announcements of cons that I'll be doing will probably go through my website. So make sure you bookmark it, www.trevordevall.com.
Fantastic. So I guess one last question from me, then I'll just make sure Zach doesn't have any ones to go, since he's still fanboying, I'm assuming. You go to lots of conventions, especially ones for anime and My Little Pony and conventions that I usually just go to comic ones, and so I'm not sure how those ones work, but have you ever had weird experiences at conventions, or just experiences where people just know things that you had no idea how anyone would ever possibly know about that? Or weird stories from conventions. We love to hear stories from conventions because fans are awesome to hear about, and sometimes they're so enthusiastic that, well, I've done it myself.
I think the real question is, has anything weird not happened at a convention? I think that's more accurate. Yeah, they happen all the time, and I find it fascinating that the fans know more about my career than I do. And that happens all the time. People will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, can you sign this thing from, some show you did in 2001 and do the voice?" And I'm like,
which show was this?
Yeah, some little guest role I did on some obscure anime that for me was like, walking in and doing an hour's work and then that's literally the last engagement I had with that product. So that happens all the time, but I'm amazed that these people know so much about it. I can't believe I'm going to tell this story. The one time I got kind of angry at a con, and it was very brief, but it's a number of years ago. And I'm sitting down at an autograph table, and the fans are coming, and, they're obviously standing up, and I'm sitting down, and they're coming along, and they're handing me this stuff to sign, and I'm talking away. It's all good. And then this one guy, when he looks at me, he doesn't...
We interrupt this interview and cover up a technical glitch by giving a word from our sponsors. Are you up to date on Star Wars canon? Have you read A New Dawn by John Jackson Miller or James Lucinda's Tarkin? Are you ready for Heir to the Jedi by Kevin Hearn, or Dark Disciple by Christy Golden, Lords of the Sith by Paulus Kemp? Or are you just too busy to read? You don't have enough time to keep up with Star Wars books, but do you have time to travel? So why don't you try Audible.com, where you can get all these books to be able to listen to in the car. I personally love to walk around, and I prefer to, that's my preferred mode of travel, or if I'm driving around, I always listen to something on my iPod. Why not get an audio book? You can get Tarkin, the book by James Lucinda, or A New Dawn, the John Jackson Miller, both of which are official canon in the Star Wars universe. You can listen to them in a car from Audible.com. Of course, here's the trick. You can also get this absolutely free by going to audibletrial.com/bombadradio, audibletrial.com/bombadradio, and you can get a free audiobook. It can be Tarkin, it can be A New Dawn, it can be Heir to the Jedi, the upcoming book that comes out in just a few weeks by Kevin Hearn, which I have said so much about. It's a fantastic book, and you can get them absolutely free and listen to them on your travel. And you can keep up with all this Star Wars canon, which will prepare you for Episode 7. audibletrial.com/bombadradio. Support the show, support Audible, get yourself some awesome, amazing Star Wars canon to listen to, and some done by some great narrators. And now let's pause for station identification before we get back to the show.
Hey, baby, this is Johnny Bravo, and you're listening to Bombat Radio. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, you said the guy walked up to you and you were signing things, and then it went, and then cut off.
What a dramatic pause.
Yeah, I'm going to keep that in the show.
Yeah, he came up to me, and he didn't say hello, he didn't say anything. He came up to me, and he said, "I can see your bald spot."
Wow.
Now, first of all, I don't have a bald spot. Second of all, what the hell is that? So I was so stunned. I was like, what? Who? Why? What? But other than that, the fans are great, and they're so filled with joy to be there and love of the show, and I mean, it's like a festival, man. It's like a festive atmosphere where they get to go and share all of this stuff with thousands of other people who are all there for the exact same reason, and it's licensed to indulge your inner geek. It's great. It's fantastic. I was at a convention last year where I got to meet I can't remember his name, but he's the author who wrote The Last Unicorn. And Glass Unicorn for me was one of those movies that I grew up with, which is like a seminal part of my childhood. So to meet this guy who wrote it, I was like, that's so cool. Where else would I get the opportunity to do that except at one of these conventions? So I really like him. I really like, meeting the various folks. I met the cast of Star Trek The Next Generation at a convention once. They were great.
So Patrick Stewart.
Yes, Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis and Gates McFadden. And the whole gang was there. So it's cool. Yeah, the cons are really neat because you get to meet all these folks, but I dig them. I want to start doing more. And as I said, I suspect that now with this Guardians of the Galaxy thing, there may be a few more sort of comic-based conventions in my future.
Were you ready for the My Little Pony fans and like BronyCons when you started with that show? Because those conventions can be strange if you are not used to that.
I had no idea
atmosphere.
I had no idea what was going on. I was like, what? Okay, I mean, it's a good show, I guess, but you guys, wow, okay. But those guys, the bronies, they are some of the most generous and pleasant guys I've ever come across. They were just so helpful and so interested, but not in. It's funny because a lot of the bronies that I've met with and seen and hung out with over the years, they're just kind of. Bizarrely, they're just kind of regular guys, that just happen to have this really intense passion for this little girl show, which is, it's fine. But we have a ball. I mean, they treat us like kings, and we get to just pal around with them and stuff. So I think they're great, and certainly that show has got me a bunch of cons. Like that show, who knew? Who knew that thing would take off the way it did? And who knew that, my little characters that I play, they're not even main characters. They're just a couple of little guest stars that every now and then show up. But who knows that those, oh my God, your fancy pants, oh my God. Yeah, I guess, I think. Was I?
Well, this has been fantastic. You sure you have no more questions, Zach?
Yeah, I'm good. It's been a ton of fun.
Cool.
I'm quite sure everyone's going to consider this one of the more fun episodes we've had. Thank you so much, Trevor. I guess there's one question I should ask, because my wife just wants to know, since you were called Trevor, after Iron Man 3 came out, did anyone go up to you and say, hi, are you Trevor? Like Ben Kingsley's Trevor Mandarin?
No, but it's never too late for people to start doing that.
Okay, next convention, do it at a BronyCon. And no.
That's great.
Well, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. This is fantastic, and huge fans of your work.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. It's been my pleasure.